Hello there. Very good evening and welcome to Let's Talk Politics. I'm your host, Eddie Layne, and of course, I must first apologize for not being with you on Tuesday and Thursday evening due to some personal matters. I was unable to be here. Nonetheless, I'm back this evening and here to continue to have discussions on the progress and development taking place in our country, as well as to respond to some of a lot of lies and misinformation. A lot of, as the vice president put it, and when I bring my guest in, just we'll have some more discussions on the vice president's press conference. But as the vice president put it, the crocodile tears that are coming from the opposition, most of it being baseless. This evening, I'm joined by one of my popular and very regular guests, the Honorable Sanjeev Datadin, attorney at law, and of course, member of parliament for the People's Progressive Party Civic. Sanjeev, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Ed. Thank you for having me. Good evening to your viewers and your listeners. And as always, it's a pleasure to be here.
And I also want to apologize, Sanjeev, that we start this evening a little late due to circumstances beyond my control. But I want us to dig right in to address a couple of issues. And we are continuing, before I get into the development agenda and where we are as a country at this point in time in terms of turning around this country that we inherited back in August 2020 in a very, very bad state, I must say. I want to start with what I've seen now, and this is the kind of nitpicking we've been seeing coming from the opposition ever so often, that they are so petty and they are so short-sighted, they are so ill-informed and misinformed and so much in a bubble that so many things that are happening they don't understand. And I've seen Harman is going at length to talk about mangrove, destruction of mangrove, and all sorts of things. And I think the government has put that matter to rest. We've clarified it. We have explained the reason behind it. We've gone through the paces, and we've said repeatedly, Sanjeev, and this is how you can understand that these guys are really in a bubble. They don't understand what is happening. That mangroves was an alternative. It was an alternative because it was a cheaper alternative at the time when our country couldn't afford the reinforced, very strong sea defense structure. Mangrove was seen as an alternative, but not as the answer completely to sea defense challenges. So the removal of mangroves in a particular area has to be seen in a context, and I want to address that context first. The fact that the investor is putting in reinforced steel structure as a replacement to the mangrove, as a sea defense structure, which is more durable, which makes his investment and the surrounding um, maybe properties, businesses, homes, etc., way safer. But Harman and his gang don't understand that. And what is hypocritical, Sanjeev, about Harman is that Harman is now writing to the international community. Could you imagine you have an opposition leader, and I think the vice president put it into context yesterday, that you have an opposition leader who sits all day and writes letters. Back in the days, you used to have pen pal. I don't know if you can remember pen pal. Used to come in the paper where people put their names and their address and they ask you to write to them to become friends. Harman is busy with pen pal now. He's writing 50 letters he wrote to the same international community that this fella and his party told to stay out of Guyana's business when they were trying to steal the elections. He is now turning to them and writing to them without even understanding the context. And this, I always say I feel sorry for the people who are still supporting this gang of purely incompetent, mad people.
Ed, I mean, if we start with just the simple things, Guyana is moving in a different direction. Development and funds for development and resources means that things would be done differently. It's easy for you to harp on mangroves, and there is no doubt mangroves are a good way to protect a coastline from erosion. That is no doubt. Now, in the situation Guyana was before, we were and we still are a poor country. And as a poor country, you have to utilize what your resources can afford. And you have to utilize what's available to you in the best context so that you can, get the best out of what you can. Mangroves grow essentially almost practically wild. They are not high maintenance, but what they do is effectively protect the coastline. Now, if we have a petroleum industry growing in Guyana. The petroleum and the rigs are offshore. They're about 120, between 120 and 170 miles offshore. Now, if it's offshore, and we, of course, as do all human beings, we live on land. So we have to be able to transport things to the rigs. We have to be able to bring things back from the rigs. This is a process. This is not rocket science. The requirement for that will be wharves. Commonly, we've all been talking about it. It's the shore bases. You're going to have shore bases with the capacity to be able to support and to service the rigs and the platforms and the FPSOs and all the various things that we have offshore as part of the petroleum sector. But you can't really have a wharf and have mangrove at the same time in the context of development. Now, all we have to do is we have to recognize there was one way of doing it before. Now, the removal of mangroves is simply going to replace it with a wharf and a sea defense structure that as opposed to being natural, being from the mangroves, will be now a man-made structure, which is like the seawall: cement, steel, sand, stone, the rest of it. So there is no diminution, there is no lessening of the protection enjoyed at the coastline. In fact, it's an improvement in the protection of the coastline. And in fact, had we the money as a nation, we should be doing more of the man-made protection than we are of the natural protection that comes with the mangroves. If you look around in countries that are low-lying, you notice in the poorer countries, they try to rely on natural things like mangroves, etc. But in the wealthier and more developed countries, they rely on seawalls, on steel and concrete to keep the ocean at bay. That's a fact of life. Now, Guyana, the removal of the mangroves has been known, it's been in the public domain, and it is for a gentleman who is investing hundreds of millions of dollars in a shore base. He wants to build to assist in the support structure of what goes on offshore. And he can't do that. Your boats can't come to dock where there are mangroves. That's just the reality of life. I mean, we want to continue to complain about natural diversity being destroyed. But we've got to realize that there is a change and there will be a balance. A balance has to be achieved. The protection must be such that our shorelines are protected. It's going to be protected in a different way, but it's going to be protected, which is what we really need to know. That's what we really need to be satisfied about. And it's rather rich coming from Mr. Harman and the opposition about criticizing items of development and criticizing projects, major projects of development, when they were in government. They failed to have any of these major projects move forward. They failed to do anything except support, as was said yesterday by the vice president. They had a plan for nothing except that they had a plan to rig the election. That was apparently the only plan that they had. But development means change. Now, I agree that change shouldn't be wholesale and we shouldn't give up our natural environment and our biodiversity. I totally agree with that. But we cannot hold on to all of it at the same time and expect to have any level of development. It's like so much of the quarreling is made uh, that they were quarreling, the opposition and other persons are quarreling about flaring. Now, the flaring with compensation is one methodology, but the other part about it is this is an occurrence that can happen, and in fact, in Guyana, it has happened with the oil production sector. You see, with every aspect of development, there comes a price that we have to deal with. What goes on in the mining sector? We know that there were issues about trees being damaged. Yesterday, we heard that Guyana is going to replant a lot of the trees damaged by miners. Now, these are all things that's how development moves forward. At first, you have no one doing anything, no economic activity, in which case it's always the argument. The argument always comes down to the reason. What do? Do you sit and watch the trees? And do you sit and say that you're going to do nothing while your people struggle? You have to take steps to balance the two. Irokram is an example of a fairly good balance, as far as I'm aware. And there is no reason why we have to hold these hard and fast rules. Development mean it, by itself, it means that we have to have changes. Our changes are going to involve a lot to do with our coastline. We're going to have to remove some of the natural vegetation and we're going to replace it with man-made protection. Now, we've got to balance just willy-nilly going to move all the natural line. That to put in context, the reality is important, and to complain about things for the sake of complaining when you don't understand and they don't appreciate what is required and what development is and how development takes place in the context of the environment, then I mean it's really a waste of time. And what are they quarreling about exactly? They're quarreling about the removal of a portion of mangroves, which will be replaced by essentially a sea defense, a man made structure to achieve the same objective in perhaps a longer lasting way. That's, of course, the reality of what will happen with a wharf. But economic development, these things must happen. We just have to have a conscientious plan to not allow it to go on willy nilly. But if you look at the various things that they keep harping on about, development, Ed, is a process. Today we start doing this, then by 6 months from now we've moved along to something else. 8 months, 10 months, a year, you will see the structures rise. You will see what protection is replacing the mangroves. It wouldn't be rocket science. It will be seen. So to complain about it now to the international community about mangroves is quite funny, actually, if you think about it.
But Sanjeev, you see the issue here, and you know, sometimes we take the complaining lightly, but we have to recognize that we're in a situation in this country where we have an opposition. I don't understand really the role of an opposition. They never understood the role of being in government and what they were required to do while they held office, and they don't even understand their role in opposition. And I mean, they have to have very, very long time there. It's sad that they don't understand what they'll do there for the next maybe couple of, um, what, I don't know how long, but they're going to be there for a very long time because they have failed this country. But when you have people who are not, you criticize for criticizing's sake and you're not offering an alternative, then you're in a serious situation. So, totally ignorant of the fact of the context of what is happening. And, development in this country is a stranger to APNUAFC. They don't understand the term development. They don't understand that at all. So when they see development, it is something that is very strange to them. It is something that they think it's out of the ordinary, or something, because they've never been able to do anything that is going to contribute to the development of individuals outside of their small cabal or this country. So we have to understand that. But I looked at some of what, the statement that came from Harman again in the opposition, talking about the PUP is trying to divert attention because of negative publicity, because of diplomatic pressure, because of all. I don't know where this guy gets these things from. Honestly, I don't know, Sanjeev. This man, like, he wakes up in the morning and he sits on his bed maybe and he say, you know what, today, these are the crazy, the stupid things I'm preparing to talk. I don't know where he get these things from. About state of the economy, about people suffering, hardship on Guyanese. This is a man who said he had no apology of his government then taking 50%, his ministers rather, taking 50 to 80% and 100% salary increases. And that the Guyanese people, his prime minister then, Nagamoto, said they should have patience. They should wait. This is a man whose government fired thousands of people. You had over 30,000 people who lost jobs across the board in the mining sector, in the public sector, in Gaisuko, in the Amerindian communities, all over the place. This is a man whose government presided over taxing this nation. They were only left to tax the air that we breathe. That was the only thing left for them to tax. They put VAT on everything, VAT on water, VAT on electricity. They took away the school children cash grant. They they took away the subsidy for the pensioners on water and electricity. They weren't creating jobs for people. And they were all the licensing fees and so on, they increased. And they're talking about hardships on the Guyanese people. Could you believe? Could you believe how crazy, how mad these people are? So he itemized about escalating food prices. And Sanjeev, I want us to talk a little bit about that and put that into context. Put that into context. And it's either of two things. It's either Harman is downright ignorant of the context, or two, he's using everything to play politics. And I saw one of his minions, Sarah Duncan, using the death of someone, of a man who died from COVID-19, using the man's death to play politics, to lie about the. It's a Hindu priest, a pandit, claiming that the man was officiating at some big wedding um, in Cotton Tree, and a whole host of government ministers were there, and a whole bundle of lies using the death of someone. But I'll deal with that as we go along. But Harman is talking about escalating food prices. Harman is talking about underperformance of the economy. I don't know where the guy get these things from. Loss of jobs and livelihoods of thousands of people. The COVID-19 pandemic. Um, Crime at an all-time high. Ramjatan threw up his hands and said, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know what to do. Cry like a baby when he was asked about the crime situation in the country. Um, you have Harman coming out to tell people, uh, you know, about the state of the country and that the PvP is trying to divert attention. These guys are absolutely mad.
They're delusional, Ed. But I would tell you something about the pandit that and those comments which have been circulated by the opposition and led by that member of parliament. The family of that gentleman have been very hurt and very upset by it. He's actually Pandit Lalaram is part of my family, somebody that I knew for a very long time, and he's actually related to me by marriage. And it is atrocious that at the time that this has happened, this gentleman has been, he wasn't feeling very well. It's been for about 2 weeks now. We were hearing that, things were getting a little better, and then they were getting a little worse, then they were getting a little better. And regrettably, these events have happened. And for a member of parliament and politicians to take aim at that and tried to play politics with it, insinuating it was his fault, insinuating that um, the government ministers were at locations and all these sorts of things. Really, they should have a heart. This is not the time. This is not the event that they should be doing that. And this is someone who's related to me, and I feel very strongly about it. They know nothing of that gentleman. That man is known by all that know him to be a very generous man, to be a very humble man. And you can ask anybody from Bath Settlement where he's from, and they will tell you that. And it is absolutely in poor taste for them to embark on this process as it relates Pandit Lalaram. It is most unfortunate. And there is no need for them and their selfish agenda to hurt that man's family in the way that they're doing. There is no need for them to do that. This is beyond the pale. But even if we're to go beyond, even if we're to go further, Ed, about food prices, you see, there it's delusional. It's delusional in one aspect because it's lies. We have another MP who said that there was some request that you have to give the ethnic breakdown of the police force. I mean, utter trash. There is no such thing going on. The police have issued a statement now that is denied it. But how do they know of these utter and total lies that they embellish and broadcast about it? And then they do it, they have a laugh about it as if it's a joke. They say nothing else about it. It is denied, it is proven false, and then they run away. There is no apology, there is no accountability. This must stop. This really must stop. Leaders have to be accountable to the people, and they cannot use their platforms to peddle lies in the manner that they're doing. Absolutely outrageous lies, which are, and what was it? It was essentially that the police stations had to account for the number of police and the amount of police that were there by ethnic breakdown, and emphasizes it as if what was required is a matter of race. It was trying to drive. Now, if all the opposition geniuses have on their side is to drive a wedge about race, then they should step aside and let those who actually care about the country take it forward. They certainly have no benefit, not to them, not to the nation, not to anyone, to continue to fan flames of racism. There is no value in that. And the quicker they learn that, the better. Now, the other thing about that was raised was about food prices, and food prices are going up. Ed, Guyana decided a long time ago, because of where we were and the economics of the day, the currency, for example, was quote unquote floated, means there used to be under the PNC in the 1980s. I was old enough to remember what it was, and the exchange rate all of a sudden jumped to $10 to one with the US, and that's what the central bank told you it was. And if you went to the bank and you wanted money, you had to pay $10 to one. But the banks didn't have any currency to give you because everybody was paying $44 to one on America's Street. And then when it moved up, the banks moved it up, it went to $127 on America Street. The reality was the demand and the state of the country meant that there was a black market for currency. That's what it is. Everybody knows that there was a black market. What happened subsequently when the PPP came into government, a lot of the market forces were allowed to dictate price. So the whole process of the currency, of the other things that relate to market prices, there what determines it, and what the principles that guide it is a free market. When there is demand, it goes up. When there is a glut and plenty of the commodity, the price goes down. So I mean, I don't want to oversimplify it, but essentially there are external forces to what is going on from a government point of view. This is the demands going on produce. This is the demands going on products. This is what drives food prices up. So if there are more people demanding in the country and more people are demanding the products, the prices will go up. That's market forces. Now, don't be fooled that you could sit down and control the prices for every item in the market. A government can't do that. You understand, there are some prices and there's some items that are regulated for different reasons, but they all have to be based on some index of demand. I mean, gold, for example, that the gold board prices is based on the London fix. What is the world market prices set in London? So these things are not new. But what is happening is there are external forces that are driving the prices up, and there are external demand issues that are related to that. Now, Mr. Harman wants to blame the government for that. How does the government curtail, or how do we, or how does a government, any government, control a commodity? How much peppers in the market? How many people want to eat peppers? I mean, you realize that the prices are going to rise because in a world that we are now as well, this is a pandemic a year running. So even goods that are imported into Guyana are more expensive. If you look at the news, you will see the price index in a lot of the developed world, at least where we traditionally we get news from the BBC and the American news, CNN and the various ones. You notice that prices are a little bit elevated as well. And that's because there is all the problems of manufacture and production and getting products and getting factories working and getting everybody out to work. So that in itself is creating, for some of the products that we import into Guyana, it's creating a little bit of, I don't want to say shortage or scarcity. Guyanese would panic when they hear those words. But I don't mean to say that there is. I'm just saying that in a world pandemic that we are going through, and in the difficulties that we have about the supply chain. I mean, if we take it to its extreme, Ed, you will see that Apple has indicated that there is a challenge in them being able to meet the targets they had because they don't have enough chips that they put in iPads and iPhones, and they're going to be struggling with that. Cars, you notice that General Motors, the cars were down again because computer chips were not being supplied in the way that they want, in the numbers that they wanted. You look at other sectors, again, the same reason. Supply chain difficulties across the world because of the pandemic, whether it's because the borders are closed, as has happened with India, has happened in some instances with other countries, England, China. There have been instances where this has all been going on. Supply chain dynamics has now changed. The reality is shipping is a different business now. Movement of things take a little longer. I saw a news report where they were saying things are taking a little longer in the customs department of the developed world because they want to be sure about scanning things and sanitizing things. There are all these challenges. So the external things that come to Ghana, they are more expensive because during this pandemic, we have difficulties of supply. Demand is pretty much the same, but supply is lower. And these are for goods that we import, that we bring into Guyana and have been bringing into Guyana for decades. Now, that's one end of it. The other end of it is our production itself. As much as we are producing our locally produced things, our production itself, in terms, not agriculture necessarily, but anything that we do otherwise, we're a little dependent on the overseas components as well. And even in the local agriculture that we have, the demand has grown in terms of what there is, what the kind of demand that we've seen now and the kind of production. It's rising, the production's improving, but we have different market forces. This is not a government issue that is the government's fault. This is the reality of the world we live in. Market forces dictate price. Now, are things being done? If you look at how much money is being spent by the Ministry of Agriculture on various projects in various regions and various levels of production, you see that those things are designed to enhance production, to make production levels rise, so that the more that the demand is, we'll start to catch up a little bit more. It's not that we have a button that we just press and it will happen. Like everything else, it takes a while for the production to improve. It takes a couple months for plants to grow, for the vegetables to grow, for the various things. It takes, in terms of assembly and manufacture, it takes time. So these things are not a button that you just press and it will happen. That's not the way it works.
But
And the
but
food price issue is really of market forces. That's what it is.
but Sanjeev, if I should
But
add
Sanjeev,
some
if
more
I should
context
add
to
some
what
more
you said
context to
too,
what you said too,
um,
um,
of, of I think I'm getting a
I think
feedback
I'm getting a
here. Let
feedback
me see what
here.
is happening. I'm hearing my it's better now. But coming back to to add to what you said, Sanjeev, is that what Harman and his gang is not saying to people is that the situation we had maybe a month and a half, 2 months ago, with regards to the Suez Canal, where that mega ship, um, the container ship, blocked that canal, and you had 9.6, close to $10 billion of the world's goods were being held up every day. So ships weren't able to use the canal to take goods, around the world, and it affected us. There was a delay in our imports. Then people will start, and in the context of us having a free market, people will start hoarding the goods. That's the reality. As much as the government will encourage them not to, they will hoard the goods. So that will contribute. Added to that, and while you were talking, I decided I'm going to just run a quick scan on the internet here, and I'm going to pull up a story from May 12th, just 10 days ago, from NBC. The headline of that story, Sanjeev, says inflation speeds up in April as consumer prices leap 4.2%, fastest since 2008. And I'm going to read the key points quickly so that people can understand the context here. The consumer index price rise for April from a year earlier was the sharpest since 2008. Economists surveyed by Dow Jones had been looking at maybe a 3.6% increase. One big reason for the acceleration was base effects. At this time, a year ago, the economy was hit with the worst of the COVID pandemic and inflation was unusually low. Federal Reserve officials see the current rise as temporary and not likely to influence policy, etc., etc. So this speaks to the U.S. economy. It speaks to the U.S. economy, one of the largest economies in the world. One of the largest economy in the world is reporting that the sharpest rise in inflation, and they were speaking directly to the CPIs, the Consumer Price Index, where you had an over 4% increase in April alone, which they deemed as the worst since 2008. Guyana's small economy, a developing country, which depends heavily on a lot of imports from the US, which depends heavily on exporting to the US and other countries. Guyana, on the other hand, also, where the economy doesn't afford us the opportunity to have too many choices. That's the reality. Yes, we're on the path of development, but we haven't reached there completely. A small economy like Guyana will not be excluded, will not be spared when economies like the US and the US government, because of a large economy, is pumping uh, hundreds of millions of US dollars into that economy by giving people monies and so forth, direct deposits. And that is not helping to control inflation. That is not helping to balance the economy really much. So, from even from a in non-economic standpoint, by merely reading, and I suspect Harman and the others can do the same, but they don't want to. They don't want to. That is why they're misleading people, trying to give the impression that a country somehow, um, we are an island by ourselves, where the increase in prices are because of poor policies by the government. It is this government that injected hundreds of millions of dollars into the economy. I think over $3 billion through the COVID cash grant, and all the other investments that are coming here, creating jobs. People are benefiting. The monies that people benefited from the 2020 emergency budget by the removal of VAT, and reduction of those license fees and so on, were hundreds of millions ran into the billions. Those monies went back into the pockets of the people of this country. So when Harman and the others come to you in the opposition to try to mislead you, they what one of the things that they don't recognize, Sanjeev, is that this world is a information is available at your fingertips. So when they come and they lie to people, people are able to quickly go onto the internet. And in every home today, maybe have the internet and a computer, or if they don't have the internet and a computer, they have a smartphone with the internet. So by the click of a few buttons, people are able to pull up information. People are able to debunk their lies. People are able to debunk their misinformation because it's there. So to give the impression as though we are in this bubble by ourselves, and these price increases and so on are as a result of poor policies by the government. If there is anything what this government has been doing is really putting systems in place to ensure that we cushion the effects that these global factors have on prices, so that we can, the people of this country, um, are somehow safeguarded, are protected from the full brunt of those global factors that are at play, sorry, leading to price increases. But somehow
You know,
these guys think they can go out there and they can lie to people.
I had a lecturer when I was at university in Scotland who told me that facts were the enemies of the person, the idiot who was arguing. I don't want to call anybody an idiot. I don't want to phrase that. But facts are the enemies to what they're saying. They live in, they just make it up. And it's debunked when they look at what the factual situation is. I mean, it's been this way for a few years with what the opposition even when they were in government saying. I mean, some of the things that they say are makes you wonder, where does it come from? Is it a race to the bottom as to how ridiculous you could make a story up and you get a prize for the one who makes up the most? This is a race to the bottom, because no one is actually challenging or contributing to the whole. I mean, look at other issues that have been uh, facing the nation about things that are going on. The pandemic, for example. Ed, every time you and I are on, we encourage everyone to get a vaccine. It is so important. Everybody who thinks that lockdown is the solution, um, I am no medical expert, but I would tell you this: the lockdown might have an effect about the spread. But when you reopen, you're going to be back to square one. So maybe lockdown is not the solution. I mean, I will bow to whatever medical experts say, but I could say, in my view, I don't think a lockdown is the solution. I think vaccines are the solution, because whether you lock down or you don't lock down, you need to give yourself a chance. Don't only do it, I mean, do it for everybody that's around you. Do it for your community, your family, your friends, but do it for yourself. You saving your own life. This is what you're trying to do: save your own life. Now, when you see the ridiculous comments that are coming from opposition MPs about, I briefly saw something about a criticism of the power company about whether they wanted their employees or whether they wanted persons to be vaccinated and all this kind of things. Listen, at some stage you have got to realize that, or the country, everybody must realize that all of the opposition, and well, as far as I'm aware, the ones I know who are opposition leaders have had vaccines, but you don't see them standing on the front lines encouraging their comrades to have vaccines. This is unacceptable. This is deceitful. What they should be doing is encouraging people to have vaccines. Everyone should have a vaccine, because what you're doing is you're trying to give yourself a chance. But as a nation, as a people, we have got to reach a certain level of vaccination for the safety of everyone. And all you're really doing is putting yourself at risk and putting your loved ones at risk too. And every time we're on, we go through, we say that they should do that. And this is week after week after week, Ed. We see no cohesive, concerted effort from the opposition to mobilize and to join and tell people, listen, you need to save your own lives. You need to get vaccinated. This has been a month that we have been at it, and the other ministers have been at it. His Excellency has been, the Vice President. Everyone has been out and trying to do it, even with the gold scholarship projects that's going on. You don't see the opposition saying to people, look, this is a chance for you to get educated, get more educated than you are. This is a chance for you to enhance your skills. Everybody wants local content. Everybody wants Guyanese to benefit. But you've got to first equip yourself with the tools so that you can benefit, so that you can take advantage of the opportunities. We don't see the opposition clamoring about these ones. We all know the ones, the opposition ministers who got scholarships for themselves and for their family at when they were in government, but they didn't get for the nation as a whole. They didn't get for the people and the communities that support them and all. They didn't do that. They were very selfish about it. they got for themselves. Now there are 20,000 on offer. Why don't they do the decent thing and say to their supporters, listen, Guyana is moving, it's going forward. You need to equip yourself to take advantage of what we're doing so that you could get a job, you could get a better job, so that you could get the training that in a few years will position you when you graduate to earn more. We don't hear these conversations. What we hear is all the ridiculous things about cutting mangroves, about price thing, about policemen being charged. I don't understand what's the issue. I mean, Ed, about the policemen being charged. I don't think police have any immunity. I've been a lawyer 20 odd years. I mean, I do admit the opposition has some geniuses and maybe they're aware of something I am not. But I am not aware that the policemen and women of this country have any immunity from being prosecuted for criminal offenses. Now, the issue is disturbing that so many former officers and senior officers have been accused of the things they've been accused. That's what's very disturbing. But like everyone else, you charged, you face the court, you get your hearing, and you move on about it. We all know about the funny thing that is going on with the SOPs and the application that Mr. Lowenfield is supporting, that he doesn't want them to be disclosed because he's an interested party and he's charged. And I can understand he's an interested party, but I don't see that he realistically has a right to be heard either. How could have a right to be heard when they're gathering the evidence? His right to be heard, his audi alteram partem moment, comes in the magistrate's court and the prosecution. But we will see where this ends. But again, it's this circle of things that are principally made up of innuendo and mistruths. That's basically what it is. It's not dealing with the substantive issues. It's not dealing with COVID. Now, at the stadium, there are people driving in, and from what I've seen on social media and in the news, it's apparently a very good initiative, and people are taking advantage of it. And I hope more people do. And there are various little pockets and locations that people are going, and people are taking vaccines, and I hope they continue to do so too. But the opposition must stop trying to undermine the process of people getting vaccines. We've seen again, I saw this morning from the Minister of Health that again, Region 10 is still a very low uptake in Region 10. And I've seen during the week, Dr. Ramsamy has lamented the whisper campaign that continues, where you're trying to tell people who look up to you for leadership that you shouldn't get vaccinated when you yourself have been vaccinated. Uh, there is no reason why they should fight that. There must be an interest and a care about the lives of their supporters. The opposition, I refuse to believe that they do not care about the health and well-being of their supporters. But in the face of what's going on now, it makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder. Why wouldn't they take a more concerted effort to get people out? Eddie, you
But I
there?
just want to take you back. Yes, I'm here. You hearing me?
Yes, hearing you now.
Good. Yes, I just want to take you back, Sanjeev, before I move to, and I'm happy that you raised the issue of the pandemic. But I want to take you back quickly to the issue of the rising cost of living and so forth. So I was, like I said, information is available quite easily at your fingertips. So I'm looking at the World Bank's, the International Monetary Fund's forecasts, and it forecasts the carbon to see inflation rate and the average consumer price to go up in the Caribbean region about 8.4% this year. And this is in the context of the pandemic. But I'm also looking at the global index, where in the United States, the inflation is expected to increase by 2.3%. Canada, about 1.7%. Guyana, about 2%. Suriname, about 52.1%. Brazil, 4.6%. And I'm just touching quickly some numbers. Russia, 4.5%. India, 4.9%. China, 1.2%. The point I'm trying to make, Sanjeev, and while you were talking to, I just looked at a story I saw. Even the vice president said yesterday that what we're seeing here is as a result of external factors. And what he said could be easily confirmed. And the lies that are coming from the opposition could be easily debunked by the click of a mouse on your computer. So I just wanted to share the lies and misinformation that are coming from those on that side of the fence who have absolutely no interest in seeing this country moving forward, even if their supporters are receiving the benefits. So they can how much they want. We can easily debunk their lies and misinformation. And coming to the vaccination, could you imagine a young member of parliament, as in one like Sherrod Duncan, the Minister of Health, is talking about lower vaccination uptake seen among younger Guyanese, despite the high risk of the virus being spread. Mr. Duncan, who should also recognize that there are young people supporting or who supported the APNU AFC previously, is pouring more fuel, so to speak, in this fire of low vaccination or low vaccine uptake among young people. Trying to say that people rather risk COVID. Young people rather risk getting COVID than taking the vaccine or risking taking anything from the PPP. One would expect that these gangsters, I would want to call them, uh, if they're really representing people to be out there, to look out for them. Their supporters, many of their supporters are not taking the vaccines because of their whisper campaign. And these are the Sherrod Duncan took his vaccine, I suspect. And all the others, Granger took his vaccine, but they're telling you not to take it. They don't understand, or they don't care. They don't understand the importance, or they don't care about their supporters. I think it's the latter. I think they are so desperate that they can go to any length, even if it means, using their supporters as collateral damage. They will do that to score political points. And that is exactly what they're trying to do with the pandemic and with the vaccination program. We all took the vaccine. We all took the vaccine. Nothing went wrong. We didn't turn into aliens overnight as a result of the vaccines. We all took it. Many of them took it. Granger didn't
Unfortunately,
turn to an alien overnight.
unfortunately,
Harman didn't turn to overnight. But they're spreading their lies and their misinformation, and they're attacking everybody. You know what I saw? I saw Harman attacking the vice president about his home. The vice president paid for his land and he built his home. Harman can't say the same for one of his cabinet, um, well, now was cabinet colleague, now one of his MPs, who built a mansion on 4 house lots, while poor people around that area and poor people in general weren't given the opportunity to get a house lot um, on the afternoon. But one of them built her home on 4 house lots,
unfortunately, I
moving
was
from
about to
renting an
say,
apartment to building a mansion.
I was about to tell you, Ed, that it's unfortunate that one of the side effects of the vaccine and those who take it, especially as it relates to the opposition, that they would stop making up these ridiculous stories
Hmm. So
because then it might have been a good thing, you know. But the vaccine works. It's so far helpful, you know.
I, Sanjeev,
One of the other
you know,
things, one of the other things,
mhm.
Ed, that I think is important that we recognize is you notice that there was this concerted effort by various members of the opposition, especially the MPs, to keep brandishing and raising race in more disturbing, more direct ways. The the one the first one, or the one that was about saying people were mentally lazy and attacking a whole bunch, a whole part of the country as trying to say the people are stupid is unforgivable. But now we notice that the other MP who has raised this issue has raised it in the police force and has tried to raise it within the force. So, I mean, the Guyana police force is important to the nation. It's important to the process and development and moving forward. And it's important to the process of law enforcement. But he's now trying to drive a wedge within there. And I'm sure he thinks it's very funny that he's doing it. He doesn't realize that if we are to look at what is going on and what is happening now. Yes, there are a few policemen that have been charged for various things, and that will play out in the courts in the manner that it will. We've seen what has happened, but the police force has got to be equipped, just like everybody else, for the development that's going on in Guyana, and the responsibility level that is required for that is greater. The abilities that are required for the police, they need to be different, and the task that they are facing is quite a challenge, because like everything else, with more development will come more issues, and the professionalism of the force, the various programs on the way about things to do with that, the training of the force. But here we have an opposition MP trying to deliberately divide the force at a time when there is some concern about the force, especially from the average man in the street and the members of the public, when you're seeing that there were things going on with the police force and former members of the police force, which have resulted in them being charged. So the confidence in the force is one thing, public confidence in the force is one thing, but the second thing is I make no mistake about it, that move to try to divide the force racially is on the back of the fact that there have been some persons who have been charged. So they're trying to take advantage of that now to say, well, look, they're charging people of a certain race, or they're doing something that's what's happening. But again, the DPP who charges, the evidence that it is, which relates to money and non-accountability for money in one aspect, taking money for services it appears that were never delivered. That those are the allegations. But now that that has happened, now that those things are coming forth, they're trying to distract from that by driving a wedge of race in the force itself, and it shouldn't be tolerated. Ed?
Yeah, I'm here. Yes, I'm not too sure why sometimes you don't get me
Yeah,
fast
there's
enough. I
just a
think this is where
slight
we may
lag.
have to.
There's a slight lag.
Yes, we may have to wrap things up. But
Yep.
I want to join with you. I want to join with you. To encourage Guyanese not to fall prey to the lies, misinformation, and the downright dirty, racist, divisive campaign of the PNC. What we're seeing here is not is no decent opposition. We are not seeing any decent politicians on that side who are trying to really make a contribution to your development. That who are saying to the government that, look, we want you to do this for the people. What do they do? You had the mad lady, the way she sounded as though she was crazy, Annette Ferguson. Scholarship, scholarship, scholarship. We all saw the video. This is
Mingo,
a
mingo.
woman who benefited from a government scholarship, and I think I may be wrong, but based on information, she was unable to complete the course. Maybe she failed, I don't know. But she benefited from government scholarship. And many of our colleagues, one of them attempted to do a doctorate, and when she was accepted into the university, she instructed that she be called a doctor, even though she was just accepted. So they all benefited. Now we're trying to provide scholarships for the people, every single Guyanese, and they're making an issue out of it. We're trying to attract investment so that the people of this country can benefit from job opportunities, so that more monies can begin to circulate in the country. The long and short of it, the government has been working for the people. I recently returned only today from the Escobar Coast. I spent a few days over there. And I'll tell you, Sanjeev, the people are happy. The people are happy. I had discussions with a number of persons. I interacted with people in several parts of the coast. Many of them called me, many of them saw me, we talked, and they're happy. They're saying at least we're seeing a deliberate effort by this government to improve our lives. We understand that we're operating in a COVID-19 environment and things will not happen as fast as we would like them, or as they would have happened had it been the PEP in office outside of this COVID kind of setting. But they're happy because people are getting house lots. People are paying less for water and electricity as a result of the removal of the VAT and all sorts of things. People are seeing their roads are improving. Everything in their community, people are feeling much better generally because they know that they have a government that is, that cares for them. So I don't know, I want to encourage people to you make the judgment call for yourself. You look at what is happening around you. You look at the efforts of the government and you make the assessment. And you will tell me, if you're honest enough, you will tell me that compare the PPP in office and the APNU AFC, it's cheese to chalk. It's absolutely cheese to chalk comparing the PPP with the PNC because they did nothing for the people and we're doing everything that we can for the people. So, Sanjeev, I want to thank you for joining me, and to our listeners, I want to say thanks for being part of the program this evening. We're going to be back with you. I think Michael Gordon is going to be with you tomorrow evening. I'll be back on Tuesday evening. Until then, I encourage all of you, if you're 18 years or over, to take your COVID-19 vaccines. And, it's free. It's there. Take it. It's going to protect you. And also, I want to encourage you, if you're stepping out, to wear a mask, sanitize, and stay a safe distance from other persons as far as possible as you can. So, Sanjeev, again, thanks for being here. To our viewers, we want to say thanks for being part of the program. Have a good rest of the evening.